There is a vineyard in Burgundy called Romanée-Conti. It's about the size of a couple football pitches, under 2 hectares, and the wine it makes routinely sells for 15,000–20,000 euros a bottle. Now, let's walk a few meters downhill. Same grape, same weather, same winemaker in some cases, and that wine might cost 10% of the price. A few meters, one slope. In my last video, we cracked open Bordeaux, where they rank the Châteaux. The producers, the brands. Burgundy ranks the dirt, the actual ground, and it has spent the better part of 1,000 years deciding exactly which patch of earth is better than the patch right next to it. It's the most confusing wine region on the planet, so let's untangle it, the geography and the classifications, in about 15 minutes. Quick framing, because this is the single most important idea in the whole video. In Bordeaux, a great producer owns a big, more or less continuous estate. The brand is the thing. If they buy more land, the new land basically becomes the chateau. The name carries the prestige. Burgundy is the mirror image. Here, the land carries the prestige, and the producers are almost like tenants passing through history. A vineyard, a climat, has a name and a rank that stays fixed no matter who owns it or who makes the wine. So the winemaker's job is basically to not screw up what the land is offering. Why? 2 big reasons, and they are both historical. First, the monks. For centuries, Cistercian and Benedictine monks farmed these slopes. They were meticulous, tasting, comparing, recording which specific parcels gave the best wine year after year and for generations. They literally walled off the best plots. Some even say they tasted the soil. They drew the map we still use today. Second reason, there are basically just 2 grapes in Burgundy. Pinot Noir for the reds and Chardonnay for the whites. That's it. So, when everyone is using the same grape, the only variable left to talk about is the place. The dirt becomes everything. So, let's look at a map. Burgundy, Bourgogne in French, sits in the east-central France, southeast of Paris, and the key thing to picture is that it's a long and thin, running roughly north to south. We're going to travel down it, top to the bottom, and there are 5 main sub-regions. Number 1, at the very top, Chablis. Chablis is geographically cut off from the rest of Burgundy. It sits up north, closer to Champagne actually than to the other Burgundy regions. It makes only white wine, all Chardonnay. And the style is lean, crisp, mineral, often unoaked, with this signature chalky and citrusy bite. The secret is the soil. Ancient Kimmeridgian limestone, packed with fossilized seashells from when this whole area was a tropical sea 200 million years ago. Chablis has its own little 4-step ladder, which we'll get to. Now we drop south to the start of the legendary Côte d'Or. The Côte de Nuit is the northern half of Côte d'Or and is the Pinot Noir paradise. This narrow strip of east-facing slope produces the most revered red wines on earth. Names like Chambertin, Musigny, Clos Vougeot, and of course Romanée-Conti and La Tâche. If a red Burgundy ever makes the news for an insane price, it's almost certainly coming from Côte de Nuit. If we keep going south, Côte de Nuit flows into Côte de Beaune, the other half of the Côte d'Or. This is where you get the world's greatest white wines. Chardonnay from Meursault, Puligny-Montrachet and Chassagne-Montrachet, including the almost mythical Montrachet itself. It also makes lovely reds like Pommard and Volnay, generally a bit softer than the Côte de Nuit. The town of Beaune is the wine capital of the whole region. South again, the Côte Chalonnaise is the value hunter's paradise. Same grapes, same general geology, and continuing southward, but crucially, no Grand Cru vineyard here at all. Legend has it, the old dukes of Burgundy kept the best plots close to home up north and treated this area as more rural. They're lost because villages like Mercurey, Rully and Givry offer seriously good Pinot Noir and Chardonnay for a fraction of Côte d'Or prices. It's also home of the sparkling Crémant de Bourgogne. Number 5, at the bottom, the Mâconnais. The Mâconnais is Chardonnay country, soft, sunny, approachable, generally great value. The star appellation is Pouilly-Fuissé, with Mâcon Village and Saint-Véran giving you everyday white Burgundy that over-delivers. Now, you might be thinking, but what about Beaujolais? Beaujolais sits just south of the Mâconnais and is administratively part of Burgundy, but most experts treat it as its own thing, different grape, the Gamay, different soils, different styles. So I'll give Beaujolais its own video. For today, the 5 core sub-regions are what matters. Alright, let's zoom in on the heart of it, the Côte d'Or. The name translates as the golden slope, partly for the autumn color of the vines, and partly, let's be honest, for the prices. It's just the Côte de Nuit and the Côte de Beaune stacked together. A thin ribbon of hillside, only about 60 kilometers long, and in places just a few hundred meters wide. And yet, this tiny strip is the most minutely mapped piece of wineland in existence. Here is the geography trick that makes it work. The slope faces roughly east, so it catches the gentle morning sun, which is ideal for slow, even ripening. And as you move up and down the slope, everything changes. At the bottom, deeper, richer soil and more frost risk, and at the very top, thin soil and too much wind. In that mid-slope sweet spot, perfect drainage, perfect exposure, and limestone close to the surface. This is the golden middle band. This is where you will find almost every Grand Cru. The rank of the wine literally maps onto its altitude on the hill. Once you can picture that slope, the whole classification system suddenly makes sense, which is exactly where we're going next. Burgundy's classification has 4 levels. Unlike Bordeaux's tangle of 5 separate systems, this one single pyramid that covers the whole region. We'll build it from the bottom to the top. So level 1, the base, regional wines. These are labeled Bourgogne, like Bourgogne Blanc or Bourgogne Rouge. The grapes can come pretty much from anywhere in the region. This is your everyday, fresh, easygoing Burgundy, and it's the biggest slice, a bit over half of the production, around 50 to 52%. If you see just the word Bourgogne, with no village name, you are at the base of the pyramid. Level 2, it's village wines. These come from the vineyards around one specific village, and they take that village name, like Gevrey-Chambertin, Meursault, Pommard, Nuits-Saint-Georges. There are around 44 of these villages' appellations. The wines are more consistent, more specific, more expressive of one place. Village wines are roughly 37% of production. There is a quick label trick that confuses everyone. A lot of these villages hyphenated the name of their most famous vineyard onto their own to borrow the glory. So the village of Gevrey sat next to the Grand Cru called Chambertin, so the village renamed itself Gevrey-Chambertin. Chassagne and Puligny both bolted on Montrachet. So the village name and the most famous vineyard can look almost identical, but they are not the same rank, so keep that in the back of your mind. Level 3, Premier Cru. Within a village, certain individual vineyards, certain climats, have been recognized over centuries as consistently superior. Better drainage, better exposure, that mid-slope magic. These are the Premier Cru. There are around 640 of them across Burgundy. On the label, a Premier Cru shows the village first, and then the vineyard. For example, Chambol-Musigny, Premier Cru, Les Amoureuses. Village name, then Premier Cru, then the climat. Premier Cru is about 10% of production, a big step up in concentration, in structure, and in personality. And finally, level 4, the summit, Grand Cru. These are the greatest individual vineyards in Burgundy, the ones the monk walled off 1,000 years ago. And there are only about 33 of them, almost all clustered on that mid-slope sweet spot of the Côte d'Or. Grand Cru is barely 1 to 2% of all Burgundy, and here is the giveaway on the label, is the opposite of Premier Cru. A Grand Cru is so famous, it drops the village name entirely and stays on its own. Just like Chambertin, Montrachet, Corton-Charlemagne. If you ever see a Burgundy label that's a single, almost arrogantly short name with no village attached, you might be holding something extraordinary. And extraordinarily expensive. So that's the pyramid. Regional, village, Premier Cru, and Grand Cru. Roughly 50%, 37%, 10%, and 1 to 2% of the production. the narrower the origin of the grapes, from anywhere in Burgundy, all the way down to this one walled half hectare. Now for the thing that makes Burgundy uniquely maddening. In Bordeaux, one chateau owns its whole vineyard. In Burgundy, a single vineyard can be split between thousands of different owners. The classic example is Cru, a famous Grand Cru of about 50 hectares behind a single medieval wall. It is divided among around 80 different owners. 80. Each one farming their few rows, making their own wine with their own skill and their own style. Why so fragmented? Blame the French Revolution and Napoleon. Before the revolution, the church and the nobility owned these vineyards in big blocks. The revolution confiscated them and broke them up. Then, Napoleonic inheritance law delivered the knockout blow. It required estates to be divided equally among all heirs. Generation after generation, every plot got chopped into smaller and smaller pieces among more and more cousins. Here is why it matters to you as a drinker. It means the vineyard name alone is not enough. Two bottles can both have the same origin and be wildly different in quality, because one was made by a brilliant and obsessive grower and the other by someone just coasting. So in Burgundy you have to know two things: the vineyard, the dirt, that's the classification, and the producer, the domain, the skill. Great dirt plus great grower is the magic combination. Great dirt plus a lazy grower is an expensive disappointment. The land sets the ceiling and the producer decides how close you get to it. Quick break, this beautiful wine map that you see is up for sale on our website, and it's a beautiful decoration that will help you deepen your wine knowledge and especially your Burgundy knowledge. I put the link in description, and if you want to go even deeper in your wine knowledge, I have courses made just for you at academy.winemakershow.com. The link is also in description. Let's get back to it. Let's make a practical guide to help you read a Burgundy label. 2 quick rules and you can decode almost any Burgundy bottle. Rule number 1, find the place words. Is it just Bourgogne, regional, the base, a village name, like Meursault, village level, village name plus Premier Cru, plus a vineyard, it's a Premier Cru, and a single standalone vineyard name with no village, that's your Grand Cru. Rule number 2, always note the producer. Find the domain name and remember it, because as we just said, in Burgundy the grower matters just as much as the ground. Building a little mental list of your producers that you can trust is the single most useful thing you can do here. One last note, the whole Côte d'Or climate system, this 1,000-year-old mosaic of name plot, was made a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2015. It's officially recognized as a cultural treasure, not the wine, but the map. So, let's bring it home. Burgundy ranks the land, not the brand, the opposite of Bordeaux. It runs north to south in about 5 subregions: Chablis, Côte de Nuit, Côte de Beaune, Côte Chalonnaise, and Mâconnais. The first makes lean whites, the heart of it is the Côte d'Or, and the south is where the value lives. The classification is one 4-tier pyramid: regional, village, Premier Cru, and Grand Cru. And because vineyards are split among many owners, the producer matters as much as the plot. So, the honest takeaway, don't start at the top, you do not need a Grand Cru to understand Burgundy. Most of us never will. Start with a good producer's village wine from the Côte de Beaune, or a smart bottle from the Côte Chalonnaise or Mâconnais. Learn the slope from the bottom up, the same way the wine itself climbs the hill. The classification tells you about the ground, your glass tells you about the grower, you need both. If this has finally made you understand Burgundy, do me a favor and don't forget to subscribe and like this video. As I told you, I have many of other things in the Winemaker Show Academy. I put the link in description, and I see you either in the Winemaker Show Academy or in the next video. Until next time, drink curiously and see you soon.